Good evening, everyone. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Law of New Jersey, notice of this October 6, 2020 meeting of the Bridgewater Raritan Regional Board of Education was provided on October 2nd, 2020 by sending a 48-hour written notice to the Courier News, Star Ledger, Bridgewater Township Clerk, Raritan Borough Clerk, and by posting on the bulletin board in the Harmon V. Wade Administration Building. And sorry about that. I didn't realize my other computer was turned up. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lee?
Here.
Mrs. Hurley? Mr. Joshi?
Present.
Mr. Singer?
Here.
Mr. Malik? Mrs. Mead?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Mrs. Gladstone?
Here.
Mrs. Barlow?
Here. We're now up to the closed session, whereas discussion by the board is required on matters that are exceptions to the requirement that a public body hold its meeting in public, and whereas the topics for discussion are legal personnel and student matters, special education settlement agreements, whereas it is expected that the details of the discussion may be made public as soon as the issue may be acted upon publicly. Be it resolved that the board enter into closed session at this time.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, we're now in closed session. Good evening, everyone. We just got back from closed session and we're now up to item 6 on the agenda, the superintendent's report.
Okay.
Dr. Patera?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Now that we're getting closer to the full opening of hybrid in-person instruction on October 12th, I thought I would just take a few moments to go over what the schedules are going to look like, tell you a little bit about transportation and a little bit about instruction. Just a very brief kind of overview and update. I know that we've been sending a lot of information out, like the digital backpack, et cetera, and some of the information has been quite dense with a contents page, et cetera. And I thought that at this time, it might be helpful just to go over what the typical schedule will be like for students beginning next week. So I have just a couple slides. It'll be quick, and then we'll post these slides on the website, and we will also send them out in school messengers so that parents are not parents are clear as to what their child's schedule is. The next slide. Let's go to the first slide, Andre. So the schedules for pre-K to 8. You know, I had a conversation with the council PTOs, and they enlightened me as to, we kept telling everyone school was starting October 12th, and it is, but not for the B cohorts. So I just thought I would take you with the first week of school. And again, we will post this on the website and send it out to everyone. So on Monday the 12th, if you have a child pre-K to 8, that cohort group that is beginning on Monday the 12th and Tuesday the 13th will be cohort 8 in session. How do you know if your child is cohort A? Cohort A is listed, your child's cohort is listed in Power School. So one would look in Power School to see if their child is cohort A, and if they are, they pre-K to 8 are beginning Monday and Tuesday, and cohorts B and D will be attending virtually. The B cohort will be coming in on Thursday and Friday, and the D cohort is the cohort that opted for distance learning, and they will be 5 days a week distance learning, which they opted for, or remote learning. So on Wednesday, cohort A, B, and D are all virtual, and that's the day the K-8 schools will have a deep cleaning. On Thursday, the 15th, and Friday, the 16th, if your child pre-K to 8 is in the B cohort, which you would find in Power School, they will be attending in person on Thursday and Friday, and cohort A, which was attending on Monday and Tuesday, will be virtual, along with cohort D, which is always virtual. And then the schedule will just continue to rotate that way each week for the rest of the time that we are in hybrid. And so, again, we will be posting this if anyone wants to take a closer look, and we'll also be messengering it home. The next slide is about high school. Keeping in mind that the high school has been running a period 1 to 4 schedule one day, and then a period 6 to 9 schedule the next day. And because they are in cohort groups of A, B, and C, because we could only fit a third of the high school student population in the building at a time. And so on Monday, because we were already started virtual instruction, on Monday, the 12th, the period schedule will be 6 through 9. And that will be cohort A that is in person. and cohort B and C will be virtual. And of course, cohort D, again, are the people who opted to be virtual 5 days a week. And so we are starting Monday with cohort A, period 6 and period 9, through period 9. On Tuesday, October 13th, if your child is listed as being in cohort B, they will be in person for periods 1 through 4, and A and C cohort will be virtual. And on Wednesday, October 14th, cohort B again will be in session for this time, the second part of the schedule, periods 6 through 9, with A and C virtual. On Thursday, cohort C comes in person, and A and B are virtual, and they begin with period 1 through 4 again. And on Friday, cohort C comes in person, A and B virtual, and periods 6 through 9. And then you look to the next week. We went out another week because we had because we have a 6-day rotation in a 5-day week. So we start the week with a cohort A on Monday and Tuesday, cohort B on Wednesday and Thursday, cohort C on Friday, and then again you would pick up on cohort C on Monday. And so that is the schedule. Hopefully it's clear. I think it will be more clear when you see it on the website and when you have it in front of you. I'm speaking primarily to the parents at this time. The next item I wanted to talk about was transportation. So we will be running all bus routes, and we tend to run in 3 tiers.
One thing, sorry to interrupt you, but what about, there was a blurb at the bottom that said cohort D for those who will do virtual only. Could you go over that as well?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I left that out. We want to go back.
The students who opted to do virtual only.
So cohort D is virtual, is remote each day and goes into each one of these according to their schedules on each day remotely. And so we didn't include them in the in-person because they chose not to be in person at all. Is that clear?
Yes.
All righty, thank you. Transportation. So we'll be running all the bus routes, and we have we have 3 tiers to make for efficiencies. That's the way you've always bid your routes. The 3-tier route is something that is the highest efficiency that you could get, and it's something the state wants us to do. Then you've done that, so all your contracts are put out on a 3-tier system. The significance of the 3-tier system is that there will be a light cleaning done between tiers, with a thorough cleaning between the AM and PM routes. And I'll explain that to you. So for example, just picking one type of route, if you look at tier 1 in the AM, a bus with a driver would pick up the high school students on that route and then drop them off at the high school, in which case that same bus would be used to move on to the middle school. But before it does, there'll be a light cleaning for places most likely to be touched or most often touched, like bars for pulling yourself up, and rails, and the backs of seats. And that light cleaning takes place in between each one of those routes. So after they drop off the high school students, there'll be a light cleaning. Then they move on to pick up middle school students, same driver, same bus, light cleaning. After they drop off at the middle school, same driver and same bus moves on to pick up elementary school students, pick up and drop off. And then after that route, there will be a thorough cleaning before the PM routes begin. So we wanted people to understand what that cleaning process was about. In terms of ventilation, the windows will be open in rain or shine and hot or cold weather. And we're asking that parents prepare their students to be on a cold bus with the windows open in cold weather and to dress warmly so that we get good ventilation. And then if there's a strong rain, so we don't get anyone sick from being in the rain and the cold, we will take every other window and open it up a notch or two, but there will still be ventilation going through. So those are the guidelines that we've been working under that are in compliance with the governor's DAOH and the governor's guidelines for going back to school. The last line, I wanted to make sure that everyone fully understood or understands, particularly the parents, before you put your children on a bus. We cannot guarantee 6-foot social distancing on a bus. Buses are made to carry 54 children. And we will have nowhere near 54 children, but we don't know who's going to get on what bus on what day. And we will not be able to run at a 6-foot distance. We will try to space the students out as much as possible, but as that route fills up, if students have to sit within 6 feet distancing from each other, they will. It is allowable under the guidelines, provided all children wear face masks, which they will be required to do. The bus drivers will be carrying face masks for children who lost or showed up without a mask, rather than leave children at the side of the road and create another set of health circumstances. The bus drivers will provide a mask, and hopefully no one will take advantage of that and do it as a matter of course, in which case we would, take the proper actions and contact the families. But we want to be clear in that we're going to post this online. While the children are in school, each one of those desks are 6 feet apart from edge of desk to edge of desk, which is why in elementary classrooms we have as few as 10 students. And it's the reason why we're having 3 separate cohort groups, A, B, and C, at the high school, because those desks are 6 feet from each other. And but we can't do that on the bus. We do not have the capacity to do it. There are not enough of buses or bus drivers that we could hire to provide that guaranteed transportation. Again, it is allowable, but we just want to make sure everyone understands that that's what your child will be exposed to if they choose to ride the bus.
Tom, one question about the busing. We're running the normal routes we normally would, non-COVID, correct?
Yes.
So my concern is there, I guess, is there might be some questions that on the first day of school, the bus is always late. I can, almost guarantee that we're starting out. So in the cases where there's going to be less kids in the bus because of the cohorts and the virtual students we're having, just make parents aware that they might want to be there a little bit early to the bus stop, because if the buses are running, the routes should take less time with less students, less stops. So something to keep in mind.
And that's a two-edged sword, because while the buses may have fewer children, the children who would have been on them will be in cars, and there may be more traffic. So we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like. We have been running some estimates, and we've been talking to police, and we will be sharing with them what our estimates of the children who will be coming to school in cars are. From what I know about speaking to other superintendents in other districts that have already opened, traffic it's a little hectic on the first couple of days and eventually straightens out.
Kind of like
So
normal.
that's
Okay.
what we anticipate having here.
That's good to know. Thank you.
All right, and one more item we want to talk about is the instruction. And I left this blank because we're going to ask Karen to explain it. And she doesn't even need notes.
Well, we'll see. So with instruction, I want to just start by reminding everyone that one of the most important things that we had decided on going into the school year was that we wanted to be really clear that this was going to be different from the spring, and that the spring, was a quick pivot, and we were doing, I'm almost sick of this word at this point, asynchronous learning, and there were many things that were posted, and we wanted to be really clear that in going back this year that there was going to be more structure again to the school year, would feel more traditional in many ways, that there would be live, I keep saying explicit instruction daily from all the teachers. And so when we started in a purely virtual way without the hybrid, I think that actually wound up giving us a little bit of an advantage over some other schools that did begin right into the hybrid, because it gave us a month for all of us to kind of get used to just teaching kids virtually in this synchronous, daily live manner. And so it gave teachers a little bit of time, maybe not as much as they would like, but it gave them at least a month to get a little bit more comfortable with teaching virtually before we add in the second component of also having kids, in person in front of you while you're teaching. So over the last month, what we've been doing in the afternoon is having some kind of daily professional development. And in the beginning of the year, it was focused more on teaching virtually. It was focused more on working with teachers on, the new platforms that we purchased and software so that we can better support instruction while kids are home. And then probably about halfway through September, and this is something that's actually still ongoing, we started to shift the focus in the professional development towards how to teach in a virtual model. In order to do that, many administrators actually tested it first. So what we did was we had people who, try to create a hybrid lesson themselves. So an administrator would teach. There would be several administrators in the classroom following your 6 feet guidance, wearing masks, and then you would have people who were, in different locations virtually. And we were able to identify through doing that many of the problems or complications that we think people will encounter, and also, start to brainstorm through solutions of different things you can do, instructional strategies, but also, the different access to technology that will help. So that's something that's still ongoing at this point. People are in different places on the continuum as far as how comfortable they are in using the technology. So we will continue to provide professional development after October 12th too, when people are back. One important thing that I think parents should be aware of, and this is important while students are virtual, but it's also important while they're in hybrid, is that when we're typically doing instruction and it's in the classroom, the explicit part of the instruction where a teacher's teaching might be like at the beginning part of the lesson, for example. It could be at different points because you could do it in different ways, but maybe, a 15-minute lesson, a mini lesson. It could be a 20-minute lesson. What isn't usually effective teaching is when somebody is really talking at you for 40 minutes. And so that's something that even when we look at the way that we evaluate and observe teachers, if you're going into a classroom and you watch somebody just kind of talk at a class and give them information and students are kind of just taking notes for a period, that would be something that might not be effective. It might not be considered effective. And so what's important for parents to know is that when your child is home learning, whether they're all virtual or whether just as part of the hybrid, it's on some of the days, is that what you should see if you're paying attention to this and if you're around your student is this kind of explicit instruction from teacher at the start of the class. But then there should be a point at which the student is working independently and practicing what they're taught, or they're working in a group, which we can do through shared Google documents or through different platforms that we have, or that you're working in pairs in the same way. We've talked a little bit about teachers that you could even really have a Google Meet where you're doing your lesson in the beginning, and then you say to your students, okay, I'm going to work, and here's the list of students I'm working with today as a teacher. Here's a group of students who you'll be working together on this assignment. Here's a different group of students. In a classroom, what we would do with kids is we would send them over to the carpet, or we would have them pull their desks together to work in groups. We can still do these things. We just have to do it through the use of technology. It's possible to have kids who are sitting in front of you in a classroom partnered up with kids who are virtual at home and working together on a common document or on a common assignment. So those are the types of things that we would want to encourage. And then at the end of a class, a teacher would have the opportunity, and we talked even about, like, you can put a timer on your Google Meet, and kids might walk away from their computer and sit down at a more comfortable place in their house and work on something for 15 minutes. The timer would go off on the Google Meet. That student would know to return at that point, because maybe the teacher would then be gathering the entire class to kind of assess the learning or to provide some kind of closure to the lesson. If you if parents have questions about instruction, or they're not quite sure what's happening or the model in the classroom, they should reach out to the teacher and see if they can get some more information. You can always reach out to administrators. The best place to start, of course, is always with the teacher. But it's important to understand that what instruction actually shouldn't look like is a teacher who's on a Meet for 40 minutes talking to the kids and doing all that talking. You need the students to be actively involved and engaged and participating. Now, with that said, the teacher should remain on the Meet. So it shouldn't be a situation where a student walks away and the teacher turns off the Meet. They should be there, but the student may not always be sitting right in front of the computer, which is good, because in traditional school, there are moments when students have these brain breaks, or they get up, or they're even moving from one class to another class, and they're not always sitting still in the same position. So that's one thing that I think it's important for people to understand, and that's information that we went into more detail and kind of delineated what a lesson might look like in the backpack that Dr. Ficara referenced before. So that went out to parents. It's also currently linked on the website under the virtual learning, which we now changed to virtual/hybrid learning tab. So parents could go right on that and look at that more carefully as well. There are some classes where this could be, where things will look slightly different. And I kind of keep saying there are a couple classes. Physical education is one. If students are coming into school for physical education and the teachers bringing students outside for that purpose, there might be times when students who are home cannot just attend through watching a Google Meet, and they might actually have a different activity or a video to watch, or they might be working on an assignment. In those cases, teachers can start the class together, and there might be some kind of warm up or a question you ask, or you can explain to students, this is the objective that we're working on today. And then they might reconvene at the end of class to have people reflect together. And that could happen in other classes, such as wood design, culinary arts, things where students would be doing something different in a classroom than they might be doing at home. And then, again, the important thing to know is that while the student may be working independently at points in the lesson, or may be working in a small group, the teacher will always be present on the Google Meet. They'll be live and present on the Meet. Any questions?
I'm not hearing any.
Oh, thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
That was great.
Instructional questions.
Sure, you have a question?
Yeah. Question is, I guess between the class, in most of the schools, some of the teachers are moving where the kids move. Are the kids cleaning of desks and surfaces? How is that happening between they move? Are there wipes available? What's going to happen with that when a student moves from the 800 building to the 500 building to,
particularly at the high school where their children have to move and there is no single cohort of children. There'll be wipes that children can take as they walk into the room and wipe down the touchable parts of their desk so that we couldn't possibly find enough of custodians to wipe down every desk in every room in between classes. So we are providing wipes for every student as they walk through the room. They grab a wipe and clean their desk.
I think I asked this before. I know I looked in some of the one that came in from the high school about devices and being BYOD and being fully charged, but not all devices are created equal. You know, I know the Chromebooks will go about 10 hours. I've checked our brand for Chromebooks, but some of the kids aren't having those. So I guess in the cases where there is going to be a device dies, whether it be broken, one of our own devices or a personal device, will there be a backup and in a way for a student to either charge or get another device to participate in the class? Because I think we've become a very technology dependent in 6 months now, which is, you know, interesting to watch the change. Just trying to feed the technology, you need some power.
I actually asked this question to Andres just recently and Jamie. And so they said that at the high school, there would be places where students can charge their devices. There's outlets and rooms where you could do it. Students would have to bring their chargers with them. Otherwise, they would have carts positioned throughout the different buildings at the high school, so students would be able to charge. And in the event that one of their bring your own devices died during the day, there would be additional Chromebooks in each school that we would be able to provide for students for the day.
We've planned for backup.
Yeah, and I should mention just very quickly, the in-person students, there's, probably in the initial part of the lesson, they won't always necessarily be using their device or their Chromebook as they're actually instructing. But when you get to the part where kids are working either independently or in groups, that's when all the students, at all levels will need access to a device, because that's how they'll be able to work with each other in groups still when they're sitting 6 feet apart, or somebody's on a screen and somebody's in person. So
will the kids be able to see the other students besides in the computer, maybe is it being projected to the monitor? I mean, you have the ones that are in the hybrid model of the virtual. Okay, I think
that's what we're working on training with.
It's a work in progress.
It is a work in progress.
Different than the week after than the week after. It's going to be, everyone's learning, and education is not just for the kids right now.
And that's an important point too that I did want to mention, because our teachers, our staff members have been working really hard to with training. They're asking lots of questions. They're testing things out. They're working through the hybrid, but this is, in preparation for it. And it's going to be challenging. And I anticipate people will continue to learn, will continue to offer support, but it is something brand new for everyone. So
it's a growth and new experience every day.
Absolutely.
I just have a quick question, or a few questions. Am I correct that at the intermediate level and the middle school level, the teachers will be moving from class to class, or maybe just the intermediate level?
So students are cohorted at both the intermediate and middle school level. And for the most part, students are going to be remaining in the classes while the teachers move from class to class. However, there are instances where students will have to move with their cohorts. So at the middle school, for example, while they may be staying in the same classroom while their English language arts or science, social studies, math teachers come into them, when they go to the cycle program, they will have to move as a cohort to that room for the cycle program. That would also happen with physical education. And world language, if they were unable to be cohorted for world language. So there might be 3 times where students move in the middle school with their cohort, but there will be other times when they're remaining in the classroom and teachers are moving to them. And that's the same at the intermediate school.
So the question though I have with regard to the teachers moving classroom to classroom is, are the students being supervised during that time when the teachers are moving? Or, I mean, I assume that they're keeping it as short as possible a time period in which they leave the room and go to the next room, but that's just a concern that popped into my head.
Yeah. So that is something that came up. I can definitely speak to what they're doing at the middle school, because, we had long conversations about what they did was they teamed people as well. So you have different cohorts of students, but you have teams of teachers working together, and they have people stationed in the hallway so that when let me get this right. So when the teachers are moving, and the students are in the classroom, you'll have like a group of teachers responsible for a certain area to monitor that. I would have to go back and check the intermediate schools, but I think that the plan was the same 5 through 8.
I have a question. Karen, I don't know how to ask this question, so bear with me. Let's pretend I'm an 8th grader and I'm in e-science. The expectation now is that, let's just say, I'm sorry, in an AB cohort, I'm an A, and I have, on Monday of this week, I had science, and Tuesday I don't. Wednesday I do, now, and even in the future. Are there any challenges, or are the kids keeping up? The fact that they really only have the class 1 out of every 2 days, are you experiencing any concerns with that, or you're all right with everything?
Well, so I don't know that we've experienced the concerns yet. Do I think we will? I think it's certainly possible. The length of the classes are longer in the middle school and so in the middle school and high school, where you're working on what's called like it's usually called like an A-B schedule, but we can call it a day 1, day 2 schedule, just where you're doing half a schedule and half a schedule. You're not meeting every day, but your periods are longer. And so, sometimes and I found this myself as a teacher, I taught both high school and middle school. And when I was in middle school, I did teach an 86-minute lesson, and just what you're able to do with like larger chunks of time is sometimes just more substantial because you're not stopping and starting. And so the reality is that as we continue down this path, I think what most schools are kind of moving towards is that, you're going to continue to monitor the conditions. We're going to look at how successful we're being, how students are, assessing students, and then look for opportunities at some point to increase instruction, whether that's eventually additional virtual instruction, if it means that we have to rethink schedules. But it's still kind of early in the school year to see that. And there are some subjects where I think it will be more challenging than others. I think math is always more challenging because it's very linear and skills based.
Correct. And I didn't mean to just the high school and the middle school, because, I don't know how a kid can learn how to read or to do multiple. So I get it. So I'm just wondering if there have been any indications, but I understand your answer.
Yeah, and also, as schools prior to COVID moved to block scheduling and took larger chunks of time, there's been give and take on that. At one point in time when I was in Morristown, we had up to 80 minutes. So you had huge blocks of time and then fewer days a week. And then there's give and take in everything. There were certain subjects that thought that was wonderful, and other subject areas where the teachers wanted to see them more often. So there's a balance for every plus. There's a minus in some cases. So hopefully we'll adjust to the right tone and the right amount of minutes.
Right. And then we are working also on an assessment plan, because that's the other thing that we have to do, is make sure that we're providing very consistent assessment across, all the different schools, especially in the primary schools where there are 7 different schools. We do have plans within each department, and that's where we'll be able to really kind of start to identify if there are skills gaps. And of course, at the same time, we're rolling in the multi-tiered systems of support for the first time this year, and looking at ways to do universal screening, which will be another way for us to ensure that students are getting the instruction they need, even if it winds up being that we have to provide different tiers of instruction in addition to, the typical instruction that students have.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from anyone?
I do. Going back to the busing, Dr. Ficara, first, I'm glad to see that windows will be open for ventilation. And I understand we can't guarantee 6 feet apart, but what about how how much of an effort will be made to make sure the kids, if there is room to spread out, even though it might not be 6 feet, how much effort will be made to make sure kids aren't sharing a seat?
Peter, could you tell us what the plan is on that? I know you've been a little bit more into it.
Sure. First student on the bus goes all the way to the back. Second student on the bus goes all the way to the opposite seat on the back, and they fill the bus that way to the front of the bus. And then should there be more kids on, they would go on inside of a 3-seater to maximize the distance between students.
Thanks. And do we have a maximum amount of kids that we're allowing on each run, or
We're going to be.
what the maximum would be right now, like as planned?
I don't have that information with me, but we do have it, and I'll share that with the board on the Friday mailing.
Great. I'd like that'd be interesting to know. I mean, I understand can't be 6 feet, but the pattern, like you said, helps my understanding, and also what the runs are,
Yeah, and we're pretty, I mean, I want to give the, I want to make sure that I don't mislead anyone into thinking that it's not a possibility of sitting within 6 feet from another student. But when we think of the number of students whose parents chose to opt out, and then the number of students whose parents chose to opt out of busing, and then we have the A and B, and at the high school C level cohorts, the buses will not be running anywhere near 54 people. And we don't anticipate them being jammed in, one person next to the other. But we can't guarantee that everybody's going to be 6 foot every single day.
Right.
6 foot apart.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just curious. We've had 2 days under the self-contained hybrid model, and I just wanted to see how they're going. If we have any feedback on that.
So far, so good, but we have a very, very small sample of students in it. And it would be very nice if we're this far in next week and we still have, and we're running this smoothly.
Understood. Thanks.
I have one question. I guess maybe it's directed moving forward in the future that it's nice how that we're using PowerSchool to do the COVID form for the parents weekly, but that having to be done through a browser and not during the app is kind of disappointing to me from a technology standpoint. And I don't know if it's whether the technology is there and PowerSchool we're not able to utilize it, or it's something. I mean, I think anything that should be done on the browser app, within certain levels, should be done on the device app. And I mean, majority of us all have our devices around us for doing COVID forms or looking at things. So maybe in the future we look at PowerSchool. Is it the right application for what we're using? Or if not, can we get better with it so it's our device app gets better? Because I think it'd be a lot easier because the parents are going to have that with them. They can click the form, do it much more efficiently. I think it's a better utilizes of the resources we're spending on the software too.
But we are learning every day, and we're broadening our technology capacity every day. So we are learning.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know if it's the right one. My question is it the right, moving forward, is it the right resource we should be using? We did go through a plan where everything connects and communicates together, but I know other platforms are able to do that and PowerSchool's not. So that's why I'm asking.
We will look into it. I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, I'm posing the question. So.
Dr. Ficara, I had a couple of questions. Well, actually one for you and probably one for Ms. Jones. In terms of the schedule that you set forth with the hybrid schedule, I'm assuming that is going to be in place for the foreseeable future until anything changes from a New Jersey guidelines perspective. But I just wanted, for the public to understand, is that in place until we see a change in the guidelines. So it could be
Yes.
presumably for the full year.
It could be, and so that's a good question because there's lots of variables that could happen here. So, for example, if, as in some of the districts that have opened already, if we had to close down and go to full remote for a week or two, or a day in the winter where there's a snowstorm, we're all on the same schedule, and that schedule could be run virtually. If we came back, because COVID went away, we would be able to use the same schedule and come back. If we were on October 15th, we will be sending out another survey to parents who chose to go all remote. And so the children who have been all remote and will remain all remote until October 13th, until November 13th, we will be surveying those parents again on October 15th to see if they choose to come out of remote learning and come to in-person. Depending on the result of that survey, if it stays relatively the same or moves just a little bit, we will have the same schedule. It's what I actually anticipate happening, but we don't know. If for some reason people said, we heard good things about in person, or whatever happens with the virus at different times, I'm not sure, and a large number of students decide to come back, we would then have to assess our room capacity, because once again, we're driven, every decision is driven by the number of students who can fit in a room. And at that elementary level, we can only fit 10. So if we have a situation where a large number of students at a particular level parents said, we want them to come to school after November 16th, then we may have to adjust the schedule to allow for an ABC schedule at the elementary schools and change the model we're in now. I don't anticipate that happening, but we don't know, and we have to check. So if things remain relatively the same or even change just a little bit, we will be remaining with the current schedule that will be entering in October 12th.
Okay, and so, but there is some fluidity, so we shouldn't assume that this will be the schedule for the remainder of the year. And I'm assuming if COVID totally went away, or we had vaccines, whatever the situation, we would go back to a normal schedule at that point in time?
We could go back to the normal schedule, and the structure of our current schedules would allow us to just make them a full day with 20 kids, 25 kids in a class.
Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Jones, I had a question. And again, I'll be honest, I kind of cheated a little bit and I looked at some of the public comment questions, but I think they're appropriate and they were good questions to ask. In terms of homework, do you see there being any change in policy in comparison to previous years? And because we have shorter timeframes in the classroom, do you think, let's say, there'll be additional homework outside so that we stay up to speed with what's going on, with the material we need to cover?
So I think that is a conversation we could revisit actually in academic committee. I think that there's been no change. The policy is the policy, and the times are the times that were part of the regulations that had been determined when the policy was changed. I know that we had a conversation last year about possibly revisiting the homework discussion after kind of implementing it for a year and seeing where we are, getting some additional feedback from teachers and parents. I think where the challenge lies right now, and I think this might even be the comment that you're referring to, is that in the middle school and high school, because the schedule itself has changed, so there was a certain number of minutes that you could give for homework per subject area per night. But when you take your schedule and you divide it into, halves, what that means is you're not having English every day. You're not having math every day. And so then the question becomes, well, I have math on Monday. It's a longer period. do we stick to the same amount of time and only give it for one night? Or is it fair to say that you can also give math like every day? Because that's what we used to do, right? We used to be able to use, 20 minutes or a half hour per day on each of these subjects for homework, but now we've divided up the schedule. So I think that's where the question is. I think the intent is to keep homework the same, well, similar as it was last year. And so, you might give more homework in math, but give it over 2 days, or you might kind of think of it in the same way where you're continuing to, allot this much time per night per subject. And keep in mind that students can also do some of that, work in the afternoon. If a parent finds that their child is struggling to complete work or that it seems overwhelming, they should always reach out to the teacher. I have, as a parent, found myself with my children that, sometimes one of my children could have one teacher and it seemed like there was a ton of homework, and the next child wound up with the same teacher and actually the same work, and they just got through it so much quicker. So sometimes comes down to individual students. So they should always just reach out, because there's always flexibility too. I think in some classes, like we made a decision back when we had the change to the homework policy, that all levels, honors, AP, everything would have the same rule. And I do think, like, when you're working in a shortened day and you're trying to still, make sure that you're addressing all the content that you need to address in an AP class, where your goal is to be by a certain point in the spring, you will likely have ongoing homework in order to accomplish that goal. Again, if it gets to the point where it seems like it's overwhelming, the parent would reach out to the teachers first. Do I think we can revisit this conversation though? Absolutely. I think that's where the challenge lies. It's that the schedule's changed, but we still have the same policy. So.
Okay, so it sounds like that may be fodder for a future academic committee meeting.
I think we could put it right on the next one.
Okay.
And then communicate out to parents, of course.
Sounds good. Thank you. Did anyone else have any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, both Ms. Jones and Dr. Ficara. We're now up to the president's report. This is going to be very short. We are all looking forward to the hybrid students coming back to the classroom next week and having in-person instruction after more than a 6-month hiatus. So I think it's very exciting that we have kids coming back into the classroom and hoping that all will run very smoothly. But I think we have to expect there's definitely going to be some hiccups. And just please continue to follow all the safety guidelines so we can enjoy a healthy and a long-term reopening. And next, we're up to the Vice President's report.
Thank you. This is also going to be quite brief. For October, we have 3 items that I'm assuming, because I looked at tonight's agenda, will be on the second meeting in October. We have the public hearing of the violence and vandalism report to be presented per policy 8461. We have the board review of pending legal matters, which is our 3rd of our 3 annual reviews. And also I have to check, Jackie, do you know if that's, or maybe Peter, if that's just in writing or when we bring the attorneys in, but we'll have to review where we left off, because I think the last one, I'm not sure what we did with that. And then the public presentation on internet safety, we will be, usually it's slated for October, so I'm assuming it'll be at the next meeting. And that's it for the October of our board calendar.
And Mr. Stars, do you know if the legal update would be in writing or in person?
I would think it would be in writing for this one.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we are up to the committee reports. And the first one is with Academic Committee with Mr. Malik. And since he is not here, the next meeting is October 21st. Next, we've got the Community Relations Committee, Mr. Joshi.
Yeah, the next meeting is on October 19th.
Thank you. And next, we have the Finance, Facilities, and Transportation Committee with Mr. Walker.
Yes, our next meeting is next week on the 12th, I think 6:30.
Thank you. And next, we've got Personnel Committee with Ms. Gladstone.
Our next meeting is the 19th at 3:30 p.m.
Thank
October.
you. And do we have any liaison or delegate reports?
Just very quickly, I wanted to note that the SRR contract that is on our agenda for today was approved at last night's Bridgewater Town Council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Singer. Anyone else?
As Tom mentioned earlier, he participated in his first CSA meeting today. A little overview and update. So he, nothing happening there. That was nothing really, not much to report out from that, but that was today's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Okay, next we're up to the first opportunity for public comment. Individuals and or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, all public comments can be made by completing the form online. Board members are able to see all comments and will be posted by viewing at the appropriate point in the meeting. And the last time I looked, I didn't see anything.
There still is none.
Okay, so we will close that section of the meeting. And next we're up to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Miss Lee,
Jean, you're muted.
Control D, Gene.
Check it. Can we come back?
Mrs. Hurley?
Am I muted?
Nope.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Joshi?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Miss Lee? Do we have
I think Miss Lee just joined again.
Okay.
Thumbs up?
Mrs. Gladstone?
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow?
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to personnel, 21-09. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Miss Lee?
Here, yes.
Mrs. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Joshi?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mrs. Mead?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone?
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow?
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to curriculum, and there's no resolutions there, so we're now up to business. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I have a question regarding the purchases. The USB cameras, can Karen, maybe, or maybe not, can you tell us how they're being used and how they're different from Chromebook webcams or teacher phones for pictures? Like, I don't know if they're for videos or what these high definition USB cameras are for.
I believe these are the document cameras that are being used for
Classroom instruction.
Yeah, we didn't have document cameras throughout K-12. So we had them in the high school. I think we had them in the primary schools. And I think we still needed them in some, like, I think they were actually for the intermediate schools. So that is what they are.
So for someone that's not an educator like myself, how does that?
I'm sorry.
For someone that's not in education, how does a document camera help the classroom?
All right, so I'm going to do the best I can to explain it because I'm not the biggest techie either. But basically what the document camera allows you to do is, first of all, you can use it to record and you can use it to project. So it's almost like instead of a teacher having two different devices that they're working from, they would be able to, like if you had your lesson that you're doing on a document camera because you pull out, I don't know, a math platform, a virtual lab, whatever it is that you're teaching, you'd be able to have that on the document camera and project that for the class to see. And meanwhile, the teacher would still be able to use their device that they have to monitor the meet. So it kind of gives you the opportunity.
So it really extends their
Yeah.
platform even further.
Yeah, that's what it does. It extends the platform. Typically, like when we're not in this type of situation, like you see them often, like in a science classroom, if people are using them to kind of project something they're working on, or art, sometimes you see like teachers actually using it to draw something and project it up for their students. And so it kind of gives you two devices.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other question I had is, how many Epson projectors are we talking about?
These are approximately like $1,000 each, I believe. So these are more, I think, in line for replacements. So we're ready if something goes wrong and we need to replace a classroom. So we're not down for a couple of days.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
This is our second purchase of document cameras, right? I think we purchased them back in June also. So
I think in June was the initial, order where they were getting them for the K4 classrooms.
Okay.
And so I think this was the last, section, the last level that had to be completed.
It was my understanding that we took it up from every classroom to every teacher.
Well, if that's accurate, I'm not sure of that, to tell you the truth. Because my understanding was that we had a document camera per classroom.
Maybe Andre's on. Andre was the, is Andre on?
Be able to tell us. Yeah, I texted Jamie. That's what she's also responding. So the ones that we're ordering now will increase it.
Yeah.
I'm going to repeat it right now.
Yeah, we can repeat that for the public.
Yes.
Essentially, we went from every classroom having a document camera to every teacher having a document camera because some teachers move from classroom to classroom.
Any other questions? Okay, I just wanted to thank the Italian American Committee on Education and the Burlington stores, along with Adopt a Classroom, for their generous donations, and just welcome Burlington stores to our community in Raritan. A roll call, please.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
yes,
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to special services, 21-15 and 21-16.
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
yes,
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
and Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to other 21-15 through 21-17. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. Next, we're up to policy 21-13.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Hurley,
Yes.
Mr. Joshi,
Yes.
Mr. Singer,
Yes.
Mrs. Mead,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Mrs. Gladstone,
Yes.
Mrs. Barlow.
Yes, motion carries. And next, we're up to the second opportunity for public comment. Individuals and/or groups are invited to present their concerns, comments, and requests to the Board of Education at this time for any matters. In accordance with board policy, members of the public are allotted this opportunity to address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes during this period of the meeting. As this meeting is being conducted remotely as a virtual meeting, all public comments can be made by completing the form online. Board members are able to see all comments and will be posted for viewing at the appropriate point in the meeting.
Peter, I'm looking at it online. That's really difficult to read for the public. If you can make the print any bigger. Or giving your glasses and some magnifying glasses. That looks good. Thank you.
Okay, next we are up to old business. Does anyone have anything for old business?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay,
At the retreat, we had developed goals which were sent to me and then by Gwen Thornton from New Jersey School Boards. And as I understand the process, I'm to develop, in collaboration with the staff, some action plans to carry out and meet those goals, in which we will be bringing them back to you on October 27th for approval.
and sounds good. And just to piggyback off of that, we also got the write-up from the board goals from Ms. Thornton. And I don't recall if I sent that document out to the board, but I will if I have not. And we also need to do a similar thing where we make sure we have action plans to address what we need to get done from a board perspective. So we can discuss that at the October 27th meeting.
Yeah, I don't remember receiving that.
Okay, I'll make sure it gets forwarded out to everyone. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
So do you anticipate that we also approve those board goals at the next meeting?
Yes, I would anticipate that we would do that then.
Great.
And
That
it's
was-
really, it's the goals that we agreed to during the retreat, but we need to formally.
Right. I don't
approve
think,
them.
yeah, we haven't formalized it, put it out to the public, even though it's on record as far as YouTube, but not in writing.
Yes. Okay. Anything else for old business? Okay, next we're up to new business. I just wanted to bring up real quick, I know we had the retreat last time to discuss the goals. I'm assuming that we also need a retreat for the self-evaluation, probably in December. And so we need to I'm assuming we may need to schedule a meeting for that or to tag it on to the December meeting.
We never set
Anyone-
one. We didn't set one when we sent this year's calendar, right?
I don't believe so. I thought there was just the one meeting in December right now.
Our
We should
December
probably
meeting's
do it
on the
separately.
15th.
I'm sorry?
I was saying we should probably do a separate meeting.
Okay. So
That
we'll
last
need to
meeting.
get some dates that people are available, but so we can look into that. Okay. Anything else for new business? Okay, then at this point, actually, I am going to bring up one other thing, and that's in terms of how we conduct meetings going forward. So I know there's been some recent rulings, so we'll need to see what is our path forward in terms of our meetings, whether we have continuation with virtual, whether we go hybrid, or whether we come back in person. So we need to get some definitive direction on that.
I'm sorry, Jackie. I didn't know what are the rulings that you're referring to? Are we able to meet in public now? Or
I
together?
was not totally clear on what was sent to us, so I think we need some legal interpretation.
Okay.
And I am not sure who received that communication, so we'll need to look into that as well.
Not me.
Yeah, I don't think I got
Yeah,
that.
I don't remember seeing it.
Okay.
Thank you. That would be great.
You're welcome.
to meet in person.
I agree.
Okay.
Imagine our poor kids doing this every day, trying to learn, because I can barely sit through a meeting like this.
Yeah. I think there are definitely different people are gravitate to different learning situations. So, okay. So our next meetings are October 27th, November 17th, and December 15th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.